Well, I think we had it. 3, 4, 5. Yes, we did. Good afternoon. In the interest of everyone's time, we would like to start on time. We have a quorum. We don't have John. Ken, is John coming? Okay, well, we can get through a few things while we wait for John to join us. Tim can't decide where he wants. You want to sit next to me? Fine. All right. So we will call the meeting to order ever so slightly past 1:30. The Transportation Advisory Committee for the Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments. We do have a quorum. We will start with introductions. Go ahead, Jason.
All right. Jason Dodge, Town of Palmer Lake.
Darren Horsemeyer, Schriever Air Force Base.
Rick Orphan, Fort Carson.
Brian Vituli, City of Colorado Springs, Mountain Metro Transit.
Wendy Pettit, CDOT Region 2.
Patty Henshin, CDOT Region 2.
John Lusatos, PPACG.
Sally Riley, City of Woodland Park.
Tim Roberts, City of Colorado Springs.
Victoria Chavez, El Paso County.
Brandy Williams, City of Fountain. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda? My motion makers are busy.
So moved.
I'll let you two fight it out. Who wants to make the motion?
You motion, I'll second.
Okay. We have any comments on the agenda? Any changes, staff, on the agenda, or everything's perfect? Okay. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Perfect. Public comments. Does anyone from the public want to comment on anything that is not on the agenda? Minutes. Any comments on the minutes?
Move for approval.
Second.
Okay, I don't really have a comment on the minutes, but somehow I think it got changed to Patterson Air Force Base instead of Peterson Air Force Base on the attendees. I just happened to catch that while I was figuring out if we had a quorum.
I missed that. So, move for approval with the name correction.
Second.
Any comments? Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Board of Directors report. John?
Thank you, and I apologize for wandering in a little late. I was actually trying to get this out of the system, and I couldn't, so Ken had to get it for me. So real looking at this, I think the items of interest to you all is the, under action items, they did approve the TIP Amendment number 6 that you had recommended for approval. They did approve the transportation safety measures target setting that Catherine brought to you. They did have an item that you did not see on the infogrant applications. That is the CDOT was putting in some infogrant applications, and we asked for approval to send along letters of support. And then under information items, the two items that Jason brought forward, Title VI and Limited Individual Proficiency Plan as an information item, which I believe you've already seen once as an information item. And then he did do a report on the Transportation Technology Conference. Oh, and then, Brandy, you gave your report, and it was well received.
Thanks, John. Tim?
Yes, so the TIP amendment approval was ours and City Fountains.
I believe so, yes. Yes.
Is there any way we could get like a email? From, you did?
Do you need it again?
No.
Because whatever documentation you need to actually get the money moving.
You don't need to send it again.
We want the money moving, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I actually put it into the STIP this morning, but the internet went down in the middle of the process, so I have to have somebody clear the errors so that we can actually get it into the STIP. So whenever you're ready to budget, it'll be there.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
And again, that was part of the by June of 2020 money, so the sooner we can get that off the books, the better everyone will feel.
Yeah.
Did that answer your question, Tim?
Yes.
Okay. Anything else on the Board of Directors report? John?
No.
Any questions on the Board of Directors report? Wonderful. Action items. Catherine? Tip amendment number 7.
Catherine Winger, Transportation Planner. We have one request for a tip amendment this month, and it's from CDOT. They are wanting to add a project to 2019 for I-25 ramp metering for $3.3 million on the locations listed. And we actually have Jason Nelson here from CDOT, who is just going to do a quick overview of this project. If you'd like to come up.
Yeah. Jason, my man.
Hello, everyone. I think I know most of you guys, or at least seen your faces somewhere. So it's my first time here, so I'm not quite sure what I need to be doing. But I did come together with this presentation. I wonder if we can make the view. All right. So really quick, I pulled a stat from FHWA, which I disagree with. So it's I know this is not a good one. So they kind of, all right, well, hold on. I just want to let you know, I don't expect these great results because I'm curious in when they took these measurements. So you can kind of see they saw a 50% in speed increase, and travel time reduction was about a 30%, and collisions were a reduction about 50 again, and then emission reductions about 20%. And so I would think they did some kind of measurement in time where it was ramp metering was just coming on, because that's the real benefits. It kind of reduces your breakdown flow period and duration, so it kind of helps smooth flows. So I wonder if these measurements were on the onset of when the metering system kicked on. So there is a safety benefit to ramp metering. So our original project, we identified where safety would be our biggest concern. The operational benefits of ramp metering come once you have the system a little bit more metered, so you can actually get an operational improvement like travel time increase or index increases. I guess it would be a decrease. So here we're just looking for the most safety bang for the buck. And so I have the locations in Rock Rimmon southbound, Garden of Gods northbound to southbound, Fillmore northbound, southbound, Fontenarrow, we're doing northbound, southbound, Union northbound, southbound. Huh? What's that? Yes, sorry, you got me. Bijou northbound, and then South Academy northbound. So someday you would probably reap the real benefits of ramp metering. You probably want to look at doing the whole system with I-25 in the Springs. But here, these are going to reduce accidents. That's kind of our first goal. I think there's going to be some operational improvements, but it's not going to be as great as you would have with a full system deployment. I have requested a phase 2 and phase 3 of ramp metering. I think they get a little more expensive from here on out. We talked about performance data collection. So I think the biggest thing is we've kind of made a commitment to the City of Springs. We really want to do performance metrics monitoring with them. So currently, right now, I-25 in this segment is something that CDOT currently monitors for travel time index, along with quick clearance. So we monitor how fast we remove accidents. And so I think we've improved our accidents clearance as much as we can. We're doing a really good job. I think our travel time index is getting worse. It kind of makes sense. There's some fluctuation, but there's a lot of traffic in I-25 in the Springs. So I think ramp metering is going to have a lot of benefits. There are some concerns, but I want to show you, more importantly, how we're going to meter. And so if I get too nerdy, just let me know, and I will back it off. So this is kind of a unique deployment. It's going to be a first for Colorado in the way we use our detection zones. So here would be your metering stop bar. So, of course, we'll figure out when people arrive at the stop bar, when they pass, it's the set of loops. But also, we also have mid-ramp queue detection. So this will allow us to operate the ramp a little bit more efficiently. So when you see a high occupancy rate here, it means you need to turn your metering rates up. So the goal is never to spill back. So here's our fail-safe detection. So if you see occupancy here and we've queued back to here, we need to flush the ramp. I mean, so at that point, I-25 is crawling 25 miles an hour. We have a giant queue here, so everyone's just going to be merging at a nice slow speed. And we're okay with that. You know, no one's going, there's not a big speed differential. So that's the big safety bonus here, benefit. And we also monitor I-25. So that'll set our initial rates. So we'll see speed and occupancy here. That'll set our initial metering rate. We'll watch the midline, and we could speed up metering, get it clear, and then once it hits here, we'll just go ahead and flush it. So, and there's no set time metering will come on. It'll be really determined by I-25. So, yeah, so it could happen Saturday, 6 a.m., whatever. It just happens when it happens. Does anyone, how was that? Okay.
You have the same for you, isn't it?
Yeah.
Can you see it?
No, I just brought one sheet. I didn't bring the whole plan set. Yeah, I didn't. Yeah, I know. I didn't. It's like, I could stop by the office. We could really go into details if we really want to. But we have got. So we have done a con ops for the feds. We've gone through the process, and we've proven we can operate these, and we have the infrastructure and the people identified who will actually maintain it and do the operations. So we're pretty prepared. I think the really exciting thing is how we can report back and be accountable for this. So I know Springs probably has a real interest in this, so I think we need to partner up better. And I think we're well on our way. There's some changes, so we'll just pick up wherever that takes us. And I think we just need to keep you guys informed. And we did apply for a grant to kind of tie the ramp terminal signals and ramp metering together, because we thought that'd be really neat. And I haven't heard if we gotten that grant. The Advanced Transportation Mobility and Congestion Mitigation, the ATCM.
John, I think you had a question.
So, and the funding for this comes from CDOT funds,
Faster safety.
faster safety,
Yeah.
so it's not anything that, so approving this doesn't take away money from other projects that they would be otherwise fighting tooth and nail for. So just want to make sure everyone's clear on that. All right. Then the second question, if I may, Madam Chair, is just to follow up. The frontage roads themselves, those are CDOT things, because I'm assuming things like Woodman wasn't on here because there's not enough queue length to do that. So in addition to the lights, eventually, to get to your vision, we're going to have to do some physical improvements more than just the ITS improvements. And is that going to be, are those going to be CDOT projects, or are those going to be Colorado Spring projects?
If Colorado Springs wants to help to build us, we will take that help. But you're right, there's some heavy civil work. So Woodman's a really good one because they're slow paving. So we're going to have to cut into that and maybe do a soil mill wall. So they get more expensive and more complex. Yeah.
Good, but I'm glad to hear you guys are willing to be partners on that. So,
Oh, yeah.
Good.
Yeah. Absolutely. Any big concerns over Ramy, Brian?
Brian had a question.
No.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
So
Then you can
thank-
ask yours.
Can I ask now?
No, then he can ask his. You're next, Brian.
So thanks, Jason. This is good.
Sure.
I was only partially joking when I said to Wendy that I'm anxious to see how the motorists down here adjust to ramp meters. But it also leads into a question, is there any kind of like education component that goes on? You know how roundabouts, I think the city put out a few roundabout videos of how to actually operate in a roundabout.
You know,
I mean, and not to say that people down here don't go to Denver or go to other places where there are ramp meters, but I mean, I think there could be a learning curve, or like actually stopping at the red light.
Right. Yeah.
that's a problem yeah.
Usually, yeah.
So we do have some, there is some documentation we have out there, but ramp metering's been around for 30 years, so that education stuff's pretty out of date. So we are planning doing some public information releases and trying to get with some of the media outlets and let them know metering's coming and, you know.
Yeah, all right, good,
Yeah.
thanks. Yeah.
Okay, now it's your turn, Jason.
No, I was talking for you, which I didn't know I shouldn't do. Sorry about that.
Yeah, we only make that mistake once.
Yeah. I know.
Okay, well, if no one else has any questions, I have a few questions. How did you pick Academy, South Academy, out of the hat?
South Academy is mine, one I picked. So there is a safety benefit, but really our left turn, well, here, pull me back if I need to. Our left turn phase onto this ramp has to be 37 seconds. It's a beast. So people really get going. Our initial startup time loss, it's pretty low. There's 2 seconds. And so you would, after that gets going, 20 seconds, a lot of people get moving through that. So you have a platoon of 40 to 50 cars. And so that's where the breakdown starts. But the system can still absorb it, I think. And I think once you get near Cimarron downtown, that's where it breaks down. And I'm sure you guys can experience that. So,
Yeah, it completely stops at Cimarron, which is why
Right.
I'm glad that's where I get off, but yeah.
so
You
this
think it starts at Academy and it has an effect and it really hits when you finally get downtown?
average running speed drops after
Okay.
Academy. It's just the turbulence of the on-ramp.
Okay. And then the first thing that's happening here is that the series of 3 cameras, or is it something else? Because you said this is the first thing, the first time this is being done in the state, but was it
Oh.
all 3 of those working in conjunction?
No, so typically no one does mid-ramp queue.
Okay, so it's the middle one.
Yeah, so they really just pay attention to main line. And so once it hits here, they can just flush it. I have a theory that you can speed up metering and still make it effective. So I think you can buy a couple more minutes with this detection.
Okay.
That's a theory.
Yeah, we'll
But
find out.
I mean, it'll be good white papers that we failed really bad or we did really good.
Yeah.
So we'll be monitoring it. That's the key.
Okay.
Come back and tell us when you figure it out.
Oh, yeah.
Either way,
Okay, we'll do.
very successful, very not. Tim?
When do you see implementation?
So I was hoping, I think, well, it really depends on this process. So I have a few more presentations to go through. So everything goes well and everyone's happy and there's no big fatal flaws, I'm hoping this summer.
And you offered, so I'm going to take you up on it.
Yeah,
When we have our new transportation manager, maybe we could
yeah,
bring them
yeah.
and me and city and kind of bring them up to speed.
As long as they bring pies like Kathleen used to.
Oh, no.
That's a deal breaker, I'm telling you. Deal, even better, even better. Yeah, so I think we're pretty excited to see who that is. So we have a lot of great stuff coming down the pipeline. So,
Okay.
yeah, so we're ready to partner with the city on all kinds of great stuff.
And if there's going to be pies at the meeting, I'm happy to attend
John, you're not invited.
to help.
Yeah.
All right.
Brian?
I'd like to recommend approval of tip amendment number 7.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
All right, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Item B, Title VI, an environmental justice and limited English proficiency plan.
Thank you. Good afternoon. If you remember, about 6 weeks ago, before this came to you as a discussion item, there were 3 plans in this item. Since that time, the public participation plan has been pulled so we can do some more work on it in response to some comments from our federal partners. And that actually happened before the discussion item. So today there are 2 plans before you, limited English proficiency and Title VI environmental justice. I'm going to be asking for your recommendation today. Haven't received any public comments. There is no public comment period required for these 2 plans, although there is for the public participation plan. But we did get some comments which we addressed from our federal partners, and we provided some clarifications. One of the thoughts was that these plans just can't be clear enough. MPOs, especially during the last couple of years, are being frequently held up by having environmental justice analyses that are off target or that don't make any sense. So we just wanted to make sure it's very, very clear what we're supposed to be doing so we don't run into that problem and we don't get held up. So with that, are there any questions?
Any questions at all? Is there a motion at all?
I just have a comment. I did a quick review of both. They're very thorough, very interesting, but there was no date on these documents. Do you intend to add a date later?
Yes,
Okay,
we do. Thank you.
that was it.
Any other questions? Anyone like to make a motion?
I'm not allowed to.
You have a good excuse.
I'd like to recommend that we approve this, the Title VI and Environmental Justice Limited English Proficiency Plans.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any more questions, comments, discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Jason.
Thank you. And we'll be bringing the public participation plan back to you in the next month, possibly two. Thank you.
Thanks. Item 6C, the 2045 project prioritization list. Catherine.
So Catherine Winger, Transportation Planner. This is to go over and not really finalize the list, but to approve so that we can move on to do an environmental justice analysis with this list. So we won't be taking it to CAC or the board. It will just be approved here and then go on to for EJ analysis. And then we'll bring it back in May or June for a final approval to then go to onto our committees. So the attached link, or the not attached link, but the link in the memo is for all of the Excel files that you saw at the 2045 workshop. Nothing has changed. We're still have a couple of tweaks from CDOT based on the Woodland Park comments at the meeting. And then also Transit is still kind of reviewing some of their items, but that shouldn't affect the other project lists. And so with that, we can, if John has anything he wants to add or any comments or questions.
No, I would just say if, for Transit, Brian, if we end up, you're looking at the funding sources. So if in fact you, for lack of a better term, bring more money to the party and add more projects, then you do that. I'm not sure that, hopefully no one has any issues with that. But again, you would only be adding projects that you bring money for. You wouldn't be adding projects and removing any other projects unilaterally. So I think if I understand that correctly, there should be a comfort level with going ahead and approving what was done at the workshop. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, and I apologize. This has taken a little bit longer than needed, but we felt it was important to try to get better numbers. Not that this is definite, but I mean, we may be looking at lobbying for an increase of the RTA share for transit. So that is, reasonable revenues that we could expect to see. So we need to first run it through the PPAC or PPRTA staff here, Bev and Rick, and we're also looking at discretionary state funds, the Senate Bill 1 and those. So yeah, that might add to our revenue pot, and then that yellow line, might drop a little bit. And we'll get that as soon as we can to you, and then. But that won't hold you up. I mean, you can start the EJ analysis on the rest of it, and then just do our piece when it's submitted. Is that right?
Right. Well, I have to make sure we can. So when the transit projects are put into the model, they don't really impact it, do they? So we can go ahead and model as long as we have this done.
Are you saying our transit system doesn't really have an impact?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm implying it, but I'm not actually saying it.
I can model
I'm not this
routes in the model, but I need bus stops and routes, start and end. And right now, although there are new buses identified for additional routes and things like that, there's no routes that have been identified.
Right.
So we can't model just purchase of 8 buses, but I could, if you put them on the road somewhere, then I could model that.
So I think the bottom line is, and again, even if we hold off until we clear this up, if we're not going to touch the main list that you guys are approving today, if you're not going to come back and say, oh, no, we want to take something off that list and add something, which I don't think you're saying.
Right.
So provided you're not saying that, hopefully the group here has comfort level that consensus was reached at the workshop. We can approve this today, and if 3 or 4 days from now or a week from now, we get a list from you guys, we can still get everything done that we need to get done to move forward with the process without having to bring it back at the March TAC meeting.
Right. Yep.
Hopefully that all made sense, but if not, I'm happy to. Again, some looks like, what?
Well, I know that Victoria has a question.
I have a question for Brian, actually. Did you say you were going for a larger share of PPRTA?
We're thinking about it, yeah.
Because that would change our line, since we've basically balanced our plan and all our projects on the excess revenues from PPRTA. So tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, I mean, you know, currently we get 10% of the 1 cent sales tax for transit operations. And, you know, since we've rebounded from the Great Recession, we've kind of hit a plateau as far as additional operations money. So, you know, and it's not definite, like I said, but we're thinking we need to look at some other types of ways to increase our revenues, and that could be one. Whether it's successful or not, whether it even makes it out of city administration's decision.
Because it's coming directly out of
Yeah.
other pockets within
Yeah.
the city, too.
Yep.
And obviously, the other jurisdictions in the
Yes.
region, which is why I
So
asked.
it could add to this, but we're just, you know, I thought I did, you know, I got to fiscal constraint like early last week, and then that was blown out of the water with the maintenance and operations that was put in there. So, you know, many of our projects are below the line. So, yeah, I'm not sure which way we're going to go. So when I finally get this, you know, finalized and we get a word back from Bev or Rick, whether we can even really realistically say that these are funds that we can realistically expect to have in 25 years.
Right, and I guess I was, but Bev and Rick do not have the ability to increase the share. You'd have to go back to the voters.
Right.
So, yeah, I guess I was under the impression when you were talking about was sort of making sure that the amount of funding that is available was correct, but not actually changing that, because that being a vote of the people, that's not going to happen until almost, this plan would be almost done, and we would start on the next plan.
Yeah. Right.
So,
okay.
we might have to chat about that a
Yeah,
little
we
bit.
will.
So, okay.
Tim?
So that's kind of where I was going is, you know, the next extension would be 2024. Maybe going to vote in 2022. You know, we would have a better idea at the next plan update. But I was also wondering, your transit plan update, that's going to be initiated this year? And is that is funding in your scope? Will increased funding be in your scope? Increased revenues? Probably not.
I don't understand.
Will there be, when you advertise for consultants, is one of the tasks going to be how to increase revenue?
No, we're looking at, and we'd like to get a more refined project list that we can use going forward. We'd like to identify gaps in the system, you know, like a phased approach to increase our service levels and all of that. We're not looking at, you know, the future of regional transit study in 2012 that looked at a different governance for transit and a different funding stream. This is not going to do that.
Okay, so this is more operations.
Right.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments, changes?
I just wanted to mention, to go on the record, I had a chance to visit with Catherine before the meeting. we're in support of what's being proposed, but Woodland Park is very interested in moving our PEL, planning and linkage study for the reliever route, sooner than the 2026 here, and just on the record that we would like to, when the next call for TIP projects come in, we will likely be submitting that. And then also with our project for the signal at Highway 67 and Kelly's Road, which is really needed today. That's on CDOT's list for 2021. We'll be looking to try to get that into the hopper as soon as possible.
And Madam Chair, I think the CDOT, the way they approached the project was to go ahead and break it down into the individual years and then the 5 years. For when we actually print the long-range plan, you're either in the plan or out of the plan. We don't break down by years. It's not a 23-year tip. So if you want to have that on the record, it's now on the record and part of the YouTube video. But as far as what the long-range plan will print, will either you're in the plan or out of the plan. Those projects are in the plan and are agnostic as to the year.
I have two things that I want to clarify before Wendy talks, since she usually knows more than I do. Just to clarify what you're saying, do you want to pull it out of the long-range plan and put it into a TIP amendment? Or do you, much like John, are you just okay with the fact that it's in the long-range plan?
We're good with it in the long-range plan at this time, but we will want to try to get it into the TIP as soon as we can.
Next call for projects.
Next call for projects.
Exactly. The process would be when we have the call for projects and we say, notice the funding availability, there's funds available.
Right.
That's when you can do it. But again, if I remember the projects correctly, some of them are CDOT projects. So CDOT would have to say that yes, they want to do that project, it's their priority. We're not going to come back and make CDOT, yeah. So, okay.
Certainly, we are in partnership with CDOT,
Right.
and we will move forward based on their priorities as well.
Okay. Sorry, Wendy, did that.
Okay.
I just wanted to clarify
No,
before you,
it's-
make sure I understood
absolutely.
the question.
So here's the deal with the PEL. You will not get FHWA to buy off on the PEL without having funding associated with being able to build that bypass. So with our funding source, the way it is right now, to be able to take the main street and give it to you and to build the bypass, if that's the direction that you're wanting us to go, right now, for the next 10-year horizon, there is no money for building the bypass. The only funding that's identified in that project process that you all just went through, for the most part, all of the money that we have is going to powers and research. So unless we have some other funding source that comes along within the next few years to be able to do funding on something else outside, that's the biggie that's happening in this area. It's kind of like the Cimarron was for as long as Cimarron took, each piece is taking its turn. So all I can tell you is that in order to do a PEL, you have to have identified projects that we can actually fund after it's done. So there could be pieces and parts that you could start working on yourself, like securing the right-of-way, or, I'm not saying it's totally not a doable thing. I'm just saying that we have to do it in baby steps. It won't be a major process. It's just going to happen all at once. We have to work with the money that's available, and the fact that money in our coffers right now is so limited, there's just no way that I can see at this point that we could build a bypass. Just so you understand how it works.
John?
Well, I was just going to say, and again, this is the long-range plan, this is the 50,000-foot level. We're already diving into the weeds. This is a tip discussion that we're not prepared to have but the step one of your process is to be in the long-range plan, and that's where these projects are. So step one is good, and then as we move forward with the tip discussions and CDOT, as those roll down the line, as long as you're in the long-range plan, you're going to be good. But it's not probably appropriate to have individual project discussions about the tip right now, in that we don't even know how much funding we're going to have available and for what years yet. And that'll happen in November of this year, Catherine, the TIP?
For the fall, it'll start in September.
Yeah, I'm sorry,
It'll start in September.
September. Oh, that was close, that was in the fall. All right.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification.
Okay, any other questions for Catherine? John?
Just want to bring it back to the requested action. So obviously, if Brian is actually going to try to touch the list, we need to bring it back to you. But provided that we have discussions of how to get transit projects in there without touching the RTA dollars that are already in there, because there might be other funding sources, if we could still get approval of the list based on what was done at the workshop, that will allow us to move forward. If Brian says, no, I want to bring this back to the workshop, we as staff are not empowered or authorized to make any changes, so it will have to come back to you. But that being said, provided he doesn't ask for that, I would like the ability to get a motion here, if you're all comfortable that you came to consensus with that project list, so that we can move forward modeling, provided that Brian doesn't have something that blows it up. Am I making sense? All right.
No pressure.
Does anyone want to attempt to make that motion?
I'll move approval of the list discussed at the workshop for modeling only.
That's all we need.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any more discussion, comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Catherine, but you might as well stay there because you are 7A, TIP Policies and Procedures Document Update.
All right. Hello again. Catherine Wenger, Transportation Planner. So this is a information item on our TIP policies and procedures that we have that just goes over the details of how we put together our TIP and our call for projects and kind of the rules for having TIP projects in our document. We are suggesting a document update. We have put that draft at this link in the memo. The overall document look has changed quite a bit just because we updated it to make it a little bit more cohesive. And we reformatted it and added some federal language to it so that we can just make sure that we're all clear. But nothing along those lines has changed too much. It's just federal rules that we added in. There are some proposed new policies and procedures that we added in, and those ones I've summarized in this memo so that you had a quick overview of the ones that we're actually doing, and then those are pointed out in the document as well. So in the document, you'll see areas that have green, and they're labeled with option A or B, and those are the ones you're going to see that we're suggesting for changes. So overall, we have a few policy changes. The first one, we've kind of mentioned that before you've had to have your projects explicitly listed in our long-range plan in order for them to be in the TIP. Our recommendation is that it says listed in or consistent with, which leaves room for things like corridors or designs and plans, and it just makes it a little bit more flexible so that we understand that if it's not, one corridor or one piece isn't listed in the long-range plan, we don't have to go back and completely amend the long-range plan. It just makes the process simpler there. So that's the language change there, is that we would like it to be, or we're suggesting it should be listed in or consistent with. The next item is we are suggesting your creation of an end schedule pool at the end in an appendix of the TIP. This will be for projects years 5 through 10, and it doesn't necessarily have to be fiscally constrained, but it would be helpful if it was, just so we have an idea of what actually is a reasonable project listing for the next 5 years after the TIP. And we're suggesting this so that we have a list of projects that are in the kind of in the line in case something comes available, or just so that we know that if we have something that's in design, we know that there's going to be a construction project that is going to need to be funded or wants to be funded in the future. And John?
And real quickly on that, just exactly what Wendy was mentioning about, if something doesn't show up in the long-range plan, that or in the TIP rather, the feds aren't going to do it. I can't guarantee that the feds here in Colorado are going to go for it, but that's what we did in Arizona, was that by having this extra 5-year pipeline, you could do studies early in the TIP because you had identified, at least in planning sort of dollars, the money that's out there, and let you sort of move forward. So that's the idea behind that. But again, all of these are open for discussion. You don't even have to take any of these if you don't want to. We just saw that there was a need to sort of clarify and enumerate the policies, because it was sort of, some of them were in this document, some of them were in that document, so we try to pull them all together and make them a little more cohesive.
Wendy?
Also, with this process, with having the 5 to 10-year list, if we need to do an update to the capital construction program, because there is funding that becomes available, then we have a starting place. So it's a good place to start, a good thing to do.
Victoria?
It says in here that it would be a prioritized list. What's it prioritized by?
Essentially the same way we prioritize the listing in the TIP. It will be based on the scores and then your professional judgments is the suggested plan, but we could come up with another way to prioritize if we would like.
Right. And again, at the end of the day, you guys do the prioritization. So what is it prioritized by? It's not a what, it's a who, and that's all of you.
Great.
Okay.
Tim?
So this sounds great on paper, but it seems like if we have projects outside, the 4-year, and we're advancing one because one's delayed, chances are the one that's not programmed has not advanced at all, right? So, there's a likelihood that we may not have any projects ready to go if there's a delayed project. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, and again, it's up to each individual jurisdiction on what their staffing capabilities are, what their funding is, and everything else. So, yeah, that is possible. However, by putting it on that list and having it there, if you're a jurisdiction and you have some comfort that it's moving forward, you're willing to get those projects ready. Or again, if let's say you're moving something forward, well, maybe it's not from year 6 into the plan, but maybe it's from 4 down to 2. Well, then you still got that old project that has to move back. And does it move back there, or does it move back someplace else? We have so many projects, right? Because we've got this glut of, $25 million that have been sitting on the books for a while, right? So how do we make sure that doesn't happen again? Mm-hmm. We've got those projects, they get on the books, and we can't get rid of them. This gives them some place to go where you can say, we'll give up the money, but put us back in the program in year 7, because that's really when we're going to be able to do that project. And that frees up the money to move up these other projects that are ready. Instead of saying, oh, well, just get rid of that project, and then it sort of goes away. I think the conversation, if I remember correctly, when I first got here, when we were talking about this stuff, there was talk about, what was it called, a reserve list or a backup list?
Development list.
Waiting list? Was that? Waiting list,
There's so
right?
many.
Well, the waiting list is this sort of thing that didn't have anything in authority or writing. This becomes that waiting list, in that then you can put things there. It has a definite order or priority to it because it's years 6 through 10. It's got funding associated with it. It's something that's tangible and that legally you can do versus a waiting list, which is just, is there. So it kind of knocks out that thing that everybody was sort of wanting, and so we're trying to do it. And again, there is no federal requirement for this 6 to 10. This is just our recommendation, thinking we've heard what you've been asking for and what would make things easier. That being said, if there's not a comfort level and you don't want to do it, it's not a requirement, and we're not required to do it. We're just making that as a suggestion if you guys think it'll make your lives easier.
I just don't think it's. I mean, I'm not against. Sorry. Hand was up.
Only one time, Tim.
Go ahead, Wendy.
That list also will help you with the next call for projects and the next long-range plan, because when you have to go back and look at those projects that are on that list, either it's a yes or a no, and if it's a yes, it stays, then you have to do updates to it versus doing a complete new application. So it gives you a place to start without having to do all the work all over again if you make that list become a reality the way that they're referring to it.
Tim?
Okay, I'm not against the list. I'm just, don't want anybody to think it's a be-all solution to like delay projects or whatever, because if you're advancing a project, you're starting new on contracts, and there's a amount of time that takes in itself, so, yeah.
And agreed, it's not going to be the be-all, end-all solution, it's just a tool in the toolbox that, and again, from our perspective, hopefully would make your lives easier. But again, it's just a suggestion, and as it's written, you might like the concept, but as it's written, you want some tweaks. And again, this is just if you notice Catherine's schedule, this is something that we've got scheduled for multiple months, because we know for a fact that we're not going to hand you something and go, oh, this is terrific, let's vote on it today, right? You're going to want to tweak it, you're going to want to look at the language, language that or Catherine and I might have thought of, or Jason and Ken helped us with. Language we might have thought of seemed like a good idea from those of us who are at the NPO, but you that are actually doing the projects, you might want some language tweaks. So that's why this is scheduled to be a multi-month iterative process where we can take those. So if you like the concept, but you're not sure of the language, Tim, and you want to change some of it so that it's a little more clear that it's not a be-all, end-all, again, it's not our document that we're jamming down your throats. It's your document if you want it, and so we're happy to massage it any way you think is appropriate.
Okay. Yeah, I do have some comments on it, but maybe I'll give that to Catherine on the side. There is one clarification I would like, though, on page 5.
Yeah, she's
Oh,
not there yet.
Okay, I'll wait.
Okay, we all good with page 4?
Yes.
Now, page 5.
Okay, so page 5 is also kind of a newer concept that requesting funding for multiple phases or programming them by design and then construction. We are suggesting that they get that projects that are larger, that can be done in 1 year, which I think most of them cannot be, they need to be programmed by phase so that we make sure that they're moving in the right process, that we can actually get the funding obligated in time. And so that is the suggestion, is to have multiple phases, programming in multiple phases, excuse me. And I'm guessing that is your question, Tim?
Kind of. On P08.3
Oh, okay.
at the bottom, last sentence, excuse me, the priority will be given to construction phases of projects that have already received funding for pre-construction. Well, there might be an entity that submits a project that did not have previous phasing, like a design phase or right-of-way acquisition in the tip.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to make sure that if we have a project that we designed in-house, secured right-of-way in-house, and just need construction, that we don't get dinged for it.
Yes, and it will still go through the scoring process and the prioritization process through you all, and so that will still, it won't be an automatic prioritization of that project just because it hasn't gone through the design. It'll still go through the full committee project, but we can maybe try and tweak that wording to make it less, this is going to be the priority.
Yeah, exactly. We can tweak the wording. Just let us know what you want, and we'll run it by the committee, and if everybody comes to consensus of the wording that you'd like, we could do that. I think that was our attempt, and again, trying to remember something that was done by a group of people over a long span of time, so I might not be remembering correctly. I think that's our way of addressing the whole sort of, what do we call it when we, priority right now is projects that are already under construction. What do you call it?
Cost overages?
Huh?
Cost overages?
Cost overages, yes, the cost overage. It was intended to be, if you've got a project that's already under construction or you're already doing it, that we're maintaining and continuing that policy. So that's what I think was the intent there. So we might have missed on the language, but it's, again, making sure that those projects that are already under construction don't, get priority, because those are the hardest to change the scope on and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got stuff out there. I think that's what we've heard from you all, that was your priority with the existing policy, and we were just trying to maintain that.
It's just the sentence reads, in my mind, priority will be given to those projects that have already received federal funding.
Right.
And
So-
we might have a project that didn't receive federal funding. We want to have the same priority.
Yeah, and that was not our intent, so let's
Right.
change the wording so that it's clear. And that's the whole reason to go through this whole exercise, is to make things more clear that, 20 years from now, when I finally get to retire, or they carry me out of here in a box, that all of the rules are down in writing, and they're very clear, and it shouldn't matter if we've got turnover at the jurisdictions or turnover at PPACG, it's all there and not open to interpretation. Ken's going soon, he's going to Washington, and we can't always ask Ken what we mean by something. So the idea is to get it all down on paper before Ken leaves. I'm going to send you donuts, you know that.
So I have a question, or maybe a statement on that one. I'm not quite sure what the official language for PPACG or the federal government is, but you're talking about more of almost a shovel-ready project, aren't you, Tim?
Mm-hmm.
Is there a way to write that in there? A combination of received federal funding and shovel-ready, like it is ready to build tomorrow.
Yeah, we can do that. Again, I think our intent was trying to just capture the cost overrun
Right.
policy that's in existence. But again, it's your policies. If you want us to have that shovel-ready language in there, we can add that. Or at least have it in the next draft.
Yeah.
And then you guys can see how it works, and then decide if you want shovel-ready as a separate policy, or if you want it included there. But that'll be up to you guys.
Okay.
The next one on page 6 is just to clarify that since we put in the long-range plan, we want to have kind of funding buckets for plans and for regional studies kind of things, it also needs to be listed in the TIP and the UPWP. So that's just to clarify that needs to be listed there as well. Page 7,
Wait.
sorry.
Tim?
So a study has to be regional in nature. A PEL for Woodland Park, and it's the US 24 bypass. I guess that could be considered regional. Maybe my Las Vegas Street study is not regional.
Yeah, again, I think that's the wording there. It needs to be, the ones that are regional in nature need to be in this document, and not all plans and study need to be regional. So that is another language tweak, from my understanding.
Yeah, if you're using regional funds, i.e. any of the SDP Metro or any of our regional dollars, then by definition you have to be in the TIP. So the intent of that was to say, if Fountain is using Fountain dollars to do a Fountain study, they don't need to be in our TIP, and we're not going to be in their business. So the intent of that was to make sure everybody knows, if you're not using regional dollars and you're not doing something that impacts the interstate or as the state system, anything that would otherwise then be federalized and be required by statute, not statute, but the federal code to be in the TIP, we're not going to get in your business and force you to be in the TIP. So if you've got your own funding source to do your own study, we're not requiring you to be in the TIP, and you don't want, and you're not required to be in the TIP, and we're not going to require you to be in the TIP. So we were just going to clarify that.
So we had a Las Vegas
She didn't
Street.
call on you, but okay.
That's
Tim?
you.
One more, and I can.
You have to stop talking.
So we, within the last 2 years, had a Las Vegas Street corridor study that was funded Metro. It was not an actual PEL, but it's a corridor study. And that was more localized. So you're telling me that we wouldn't have been able to do that study now?
No, you would be able to do that study, but it's regional because you're using SDP Metro. You're using regional dollars.
Right, you're saying if you do a study and you're not using their money, they don't want to hear about it.
Gotcha. Okay.
It's not that we don't want to hear about it. We just don't want to get in your business. You guys can always bring us
Okay.
projects, and we're happy to put them in the TIP. That being said, we're not going to get in your
We
business
don't
unless you
have
invite
to.
it.
Right, exactly.
Got it. Okay.
No, you covered what I was going to ask. So
Okay.
we're good.
And then, okay, so page 7, this goes along with that being included in or consistent with the LRTP, and it applies to the amendments as well. So we're just changing that language to go along with that as well, as that it can be included in or consistent with the LRTP. So that's new projects or amendments. And then page 14, this goes along with the new public participation plan updates that Jason is bringing you. It talks about making sure that we bring the TAC, or bring public comments to the TAC 30 days in advance of taking action. So instead of just giving it the comments to you and then you make an action, we give it to you 30 days in advance, and then you have that much time to look them over and then take an action at the next meeting. So it's extending the comment period or the amount of time that you have with the comments, and that's what that update is.
Wendy?
Sometimes you don't have time to do that, though, so don't pigeonhole yourself into that 30 days, because you could miss a deadline that sometimes we have to turn things around fast. And the state funding pool, we have deadlines. Things are brought to us, and we're given weeks to do something and not months. So if we have to get through a whole process, and you have a 30-day process, by the time we get to the end of this 30-day process, before you could give us an answer for public consumption, you would have missed the deadline and you'd be out of the running for money. So don't preclude yourself.
And this is just for a TIP adoption and not an amendment or a modification to it. It's just for a full adoption. The amendments are staying the same.
Yes, Karen?
So I guess this relates to the cross-reference with P03.0, but if a project is in the long-range plan and it's a PPRTA project, not a new federally funded project, could a project be considered consistent with one of those and be included, or is that sort of, is PPRTA sort of outside the scope of this approach?
Well, I think since we're not labeling each project in the long-range plan by its specific funding type, if it's listed in there, regardless of what funding type you're pulling from, then you're consistent with, or listed in, actually, for that particular example. And so you're fine on that way, as long as you're not outside of it. The consistent with is really regarding the planning studies and the corridor studies that kind of, or things that say like bike ped improvements across the region, and that if you have one that's included in that across the region, then that's considered consistent with. And so that's kind of where that's going.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions for Catherine? Did you want to run through the schedule real
Oh,
quick?
yeah, good, thank you. So we're bringing this draft document for review, and I'm happy to take any comments, questions, or suggestions throughout, and I can set an earlier date if we want to have like a first draft due date, and then I bring it back to you again before the May. I did set a May for comments, and then bring it back to the TAC and board for comment, an information item, and then in June bring it back for final approval. And so I did set quite a bit of time in there for us to go over it. It's just a matter of how comfortable you guys feel when you want to get me comments, and how, if you want me to bring it back to you again, and then we go through that process. So it's really up to you guys. Or we can just stick with the May 10th deadline for comments, and I can bring it back to you all the next May TAC, and we can look over then, and then June we could do for a final review.
Any thoughts?
Is this good? Okay. So you'll probably be hearing from me again probably in April. And if you hadn't sent me any comments, and I'll nudge you a little bit, just so. Okay.
Any other questions for Catherine on this? Thank you, Catherine. Member entity announcements. Anybody got anything? Fine, I got something. We're putting up traffic signals in Fountain, and I am not a traffic signal expert at all, so it might take us a while, so just breathe easy. I'm working with CDOT on one. I'll work with whoever wants to volunteer on the other one, but I'm becoming a traffic engineer whether I want to or not, so just in case anybody is complaining about that, we'll get there. It'll be fine, but it's not going to happen overnight. Anything else? Okay, items for future TAC meetings. John?
Unless anybody has anything for us to add, we'll continue to work on the long-range plan. We'll continue to work on the public participation plan, although that might not be next meeting. The meeting after, I believe, is what Jason had said, but we'll see. And we'll continue to work on tip amendments. So I don't think there's anything specific that we need to bring. I will let you know that we did put out a call for qualifications. I think we called it something else, but for basically modeling support. So hopefully we'll have someone back on board on that, so that, again, if you guys have any then specific concerns or questions with either the model or the land use, small area forecast, rather, we'll have that consultant on board, and we'll also have a new person on board, sort of in charge of both of those, that would be available to answer any questions or handle any requests that we have from you guys. So, and then we're on the Ken countdown. We're not sure how many more TAC meetings he'll have left.
How many do you have left, Ken?
He hasn't picked a date yet.
Oh, yes, that's a date.
But well, this is February, so we might get March. April's a little iffy, I would think. We might get March.
Tim?
A quick question. I have on my calendar workshop for the 6th, the 9th,
Is that yours?
the 9 to 11.
You want to get to the microphone, tell them what it is, so make sure that they get there and bring their stuff, because we want to make sure we get better attendance at this one.
Sure. Yes, we have the Regional Data Collaboration Workshop scheduled for March 6th, and that's to go over traffic counts and pavement. And hopefully everyone has seen those emails. Hopefully they weren't too many. And I can't remember the time, actually.
9 o'clock.
9 o'clock, thank you, Tim. So that'll be at 9 o'clock, and feel free to invite anybody who works on your traffic counts or your pavement condition, and we are inviting CDOT, members of CDOT, to work with us as well to let us know what kind of data they actually collect, where they collect, and how much they're willing to collaborate with us, which would be great as well. And as Tim kind of brought up, we're happy to meet with you individually by jurisdiction as well, if that's easier, and we can, but we hope everyone comes to the regional one as well, the full meeting.
And it is important to have as many people at the regional one as possible, because, again, the whole concept here is, again, we're not here to sort of jam anything down anyone's throats, but if you all see the benefit of regionalizing, to the extent possible, traffic counts and pavement, we are happy to be the conduit for that. There is eligibility within our funding sources to administer that and help with that. Sometimes it's just sort of shuffling the paper, but for example, traffic counts or the pavement, we don't actually have to be the delivery system. El Paso County or Colorado Springs could be the one that's actually doing it, but as far as collaborating, getting everyone together and talking about how it can be regionalized and how we can get benefit from, instead of 12 jurisdictions doing 12 different things, we have one region doing one regional thing. There's some cost benefit to that. There's some benefit of actual having better information and cooperative information. We're happy to be that conduit. But again, if that's what you guys need and want, we're happy to do it. And the only way we'll know how we can make sure we have that opportunity is for people to come to the meeting and talk it out and tell us what their issues are to see if we can solve them, and then find some more funding by doing it collaboratively than having 12 different people doing 12 different things.
We have nothing planned on the 7th, right? Okay.
What's that?
I had time blocked off on the 7th, March 7th, and I think it was just a placeholder for that.
there was early discussions on that date, and then after the poll came out,
Yeah.
the 6th turned out better.
Okay.
Was it around lunchtime? I'm going to go for lunch.
You want to do lunch? Let's do it. Okay.
You won't show up.
Hey, I'll go to the wrong restaurant. But
Is that what he did?
He went to the other bank.
I went to the downtown one. I ate alone.
Aww. You even put the address in it. Okay. Anything else? We are adjourned. Thank you.